Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to the promised part of the quick view of the Axial SCX10 Coyote. We do this every once in a while, every once in a great while, the second installment of the quick view, the forensics episode, where we get inside it and we find out what's going on. He, of course, named himself in the first one Tuxedo Dan, and as promised, that is a proper hat for a proper gentleman. Tuxedo Dan, the 10-3 Coyote. I still like, it's a little tricky until you get the hang of it to get that front end on. And it is double the weight of the body. We know that should you choose to just run, as I pointed out in the quick view, if you just choose to put one of those on it, it literally weighs half. Now, this is a cliffhanger, and this is a Coyote, and not only that, this is the tough color cliffhanger. So this is the very thin one. This is the very not thin one. But to me, maybe that just swaps over. Now, if it's the Coyote, probably just switches over. If you've got a Coyote Grande, I'm going to have to assume you're on your own. I don't think we really added any appreciable weight with his hat, but we had it. The hat is very necessary. You may notice conspicuously that he does not have any wheels or tires fitted. Here is one right here. We're going to do the thing. We're going to do the Canyon thing, which is I truly and genuinely believe these tires, they're good enough. Like, these tires will do. There is going to be a third part. This is going to be a little Cornetto trilogy. Actually, there's going to be 4 total, because we're going to quick view these tires. We're going to quick view what I'm calling the OE Trepadors. We're going to do that independently. And then you'll get the third installment of this 4-part series, which is, as was pointed out in the comments, somebody said, set a budget, say $200, and see where you can get this for $200. And based on what we saw in the quick view, I was like, easy, done. We will do that. So, where you are sitting right now, if you were watching this as they premiere, there was the quick view. This is the second part of it, the forensics episode. Following this will be the quick view of the Trepador OE, which will actually really form into concrete whether or not you should go through the hustle of what I'm going to do right now. If you're gonna bust out your welding gloves and your BSI uncure debonder and your heat gun and get these off the plastic wheels so that you can properly vent them with the other tool, so that you can properly vent them and then install them on the beadlock of your choice. Because this is, let's go, let's say not heavy. This is not heavy. Glue-on plastic is honestly the biggest disappointment I had with the Coyote. 120, which is not floating away, but if we take, say, a little diminutive is that a silicone in there? That's a Injora Klingon with a silicone in it. That's 230. How about that tracks as 2.2 with the 300 even. Rotating mass is not the best mass. Okay, how about a deluxe Iron Rock single stage foam, absolutely cheap, Amazon 105, 150. So that's still an ounce a corner, and I mean, the Trep is a fair bit bigger than this guy. I shoot for at least 200 grams per corner. I find that even with a lower powered servo, 200 grams a corner is going to be absolutely fine. If you go like 250 a corner in the front and say 175 or so, we oft around here speak in terms of a kilo of wheelos, and So 250 grams a corner. That is full combo like this, 250 grams a piece. In this scale, in the wheelbase, in the shorter wheelbases, which is, 313, even up to 324, 328, when you exceed that, say, 1,000 grams for the total, you start to really feel the effects of that rotating mass. So kilo of wheelos is sort of an unofficial goal. Here we've got, is that silicones in there? That's silicones in there. Baja Pro X on an Endura Deep 256. So right around as heavy as you would want to go. And what is inevitably going to happen to this gentleman in the future is, following the quick view of this, when this guy goes into his test phase, there will be that episode, and then there will be a 5th episode of the 3-part series, because I just realized it now. I desperately want to see this versus the upgrade RC razor wire, because they are very nearly the same size. And we will probably do a 3-way, maybe a KLRV2. Ooh, look at those. Ooh, Tuxedo Dan. Oh, my goodness. Because I believe that this is pretty good for a straight axle. This is pretty good for a straight axle. I think in a portal, I think we should be looking for a tire more around this height. So that is an unofficial 5th part of the trilogy, of the unofficial trilogy. So we'll get to that. And we also have, we could throw out another. It's a little bit, that's about the same size as the Razor, our Geolander XMT. We've got options. We've got choices. We can make decisions. But first, what need be done? Gloves. Uncure. Right over there. So there are a number of ways of getting a tire off of a wheel, and this is a heat gun and Bob Smith Industries Uncure House. That is the process that we follow. You butter up the bead both sides with the Uncure before you get into the process of putting heat onto it, because regardless of how well that super glue, that adhesive was applied, because it's rubber and rubber is porous, there's going to be little micro gaps. And as you heat it, it's going to flow that Uncure down into the bead surface. Typically, you're going to have to put heat on it for however long it takes. Don't try to rush it. They did not use a tremendous amount of glue to adhere these. They did not employ the glue wizards that work at places like Traxxas or Louise, where Traxxas is at the top end of go ahead and remove these. And you will have the brown goo all across the bead of the wheel. If it is a Louise or a Duratrax pre-mount, just don't even bother to attempt to do what I'm doing right now. You will most likely end up melting the tire, because you'll have to get it so hot because they've used so much glue. And I don't know what is so particularly special about that glue, but that glue just doesn't want to come off. Yes, there are other methods. You can remove with acetone. You can put it in an acetone bath, which is basically you put acetone in the bottom of a bucket. You take like a brick or something and you set it up on top of that. You put a lid on it and you let it sit for a number of days. And when you come back, the tire will usually just pop right off the beads. Also, the foam will have completely disintegrated and the wheel is usually destroyed as well. Using this method, basically, there are very few methods. Boiling sometimes boiling works. You're going to sacrifice one of the 3 parts. You're either going to lose the tire or the rim or the foam. Something is going to get ruined. And why I am far more likely to use heat, because this is the technique that I use to remove every tire that I remove from a wheel, is that acetone is hygroscopic. It will pull all of the little organic-y compounds out of a tire, and I genuinely believe that it will shorten the life of the tire. I have been heat gunning things like canyon trails off of glue-on Traxxas wheels for 5 years and have not noticed any impact on the life of the tire. The rear bead is the one that takes more work because there's no heat in the tire. And then the front bead, because we applied the uncure to both sides before applying heat, the front bead tends to come off much more quickly. There is a little bit, there's the tiny bit of an oddity to the front bead on these glue-on KMCs. They're not like the other glue-on KMCs. And as such, it is fortunate for us that the Trepador is directional and we have 2 lefts and 2 rights, because what we are going to do once we have this removed is we are going to treat the lefts as the rights and the rights as the lefts. And as soon as this gentleman gets it popped off, you see the front bead just pops off. It just pops right off. And then the wheel comes out, and as you can see, that's pretty much ruined on the wheel. And then it's much easier to get their fingies without gloves. And we pop the foam out, and we end up right here, which is with this guy, and you'll see tiny, like one of the smallest amounts of glue beads left. And on this side, there's almost none. Now, we can do a thing. We can go. And you're going to want to do that. Those are the little bits of glue still remaining that we're trying to keep that bead in a 2-locked configuration. Now, you will notice there's a bead outside the mounting ring. And then on this side, we have very little in the way of glue. I am still taken aback. No rib, no belt. Pretty good mount ring. It's a little bit of a glue ring. A glue ring looks like this. It doesn't have a lip on the back of it. Who do we have that's not mounted? A mounting lip for a bead lock will have that shelf right there, and then an actual, right? So this is a glue mount ring. You see, basically you can make it flat. That is a glue mount ring, which means this tire, from its design and inception, was specifically intended to be glued to a wheel, specifically intended to be glued to this wheel. And this is the little oddity to it. They made a little fatter flare in the front. Now, I mean, it is still usable. Just cosmetically, some of them suffered, particularly that one, suffered a slightly worser fate. But you know what these are worth to me? Circular file. Sometimes I don't throw them away, and I throw them in a bin, and when I'm shipping a rig out, I use them as preventers to stop these from stabbing through the box. Another space oddity is we have very much in the Traxxas style, we have the insert. That's too small. Well, because it comes with this piece. It is a dual stage. It is quite soft on the outside, very soft. This is quite firm, right along, very similar to the dual stage inserts that come in Traxxas tires. But where we have a little bit of an issue is we've got a little bit of an air gap pavilion there. It's a little odd, which would definitely explain how on the drive test before we were getting it didn't like to side hill. Well, yeah, you get onto the side hill and this is just going over like that, and now the tire is literally shaped to help you fall off. And it is not a singular instance. They are all like that, slago bago. I think what you could do in an attempt to save some of your hard-earned dollars is look under your bench and find your container of fridge foam, which I should have some cut into strips. This is how we make what are called Canyon Customs. This is fridge foam. I believe this is Blue Apple brand from Amazon. You would want to recut this so that it is about this size right here. For the purposes of this exercise, we won't cut it. We'll just leave it. We'll leave it overlapping. You'd want to cut that foam, and then you'd want to put this back together just like this. And lo and behold, it's not slipping and flopping around anymore. And you have a nice dual-stagey setup there. And then you would take the tire that you have recently removed. Like, that's what's crazy to me. When they announced OE compound, which is, of course, coming out of China, the body and the tires are Proline China. I guess not to be confused with Proline USA. But the body is quite robust, and the tires feel better than any G8 tire I've ever felt. The G8 are over twice this thickness. Now, for the purposes that I use, I had hopes for these. I was like, oh, well, they're too tall for the vehicle. Worst case scenario, I have an FMS FJ40, which this is the perfect tire for. I'll just put them on that. I like that the G8 is a big armored beast. So we would just, after inserting that, we would put it back in, and then we would mount it to a wheel, and now it shouldn't squidge all over the place. So the tire is surprisingly good. The tire is surprisingly good, and debonding it, I definitely recommend. I think you can absolutely use these on here. I genuinely believe that the bigger problem we have is the 100mm shock. Now, that problem with the 100mm shock has nothing to do, so far as I have been able to ascertain so far, it has nothing to do with the construction of the shock itself, though we're about to pull it apart right now, and instead has everything to do with the fact that the shock is 100mm long. This vehicle is not configured in any way for a 100mm shock. And the thing that I wanted to see perhaps the most is, what is this shock eye to eye fully extended versus what is this shock eye to eye fully collapsed? Eye to eye fully extended is, this particular shock is 97.5mm. It is close enough as to approximate 100. This is the exact shock spring, the 1.2, no. Hold on. Hold on. That is a 37mm spring, because of course it is, with a 11mm inner bore. Let us compare that to the spring on a 10 Pro. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Here is the spring cup from the Coyote. Here is the spring cup from the 10 Pro. Here is the shock spring from the Coyote. Here is the shock spring from the 10 Pro. Look at the difference in the wire. Now, when we look at these side by each, make sure this is out. The 10 Pro is a weird shock as it is. That is a quite conspicuous oil line. The 10 Pro is a weird shock as it is because, well, just proportionally, look at the length from there to there, and then look at the length from there to there. This is longer, so the shock shaft can only go into there. So on this particular shock, we were, what, 97.5 eye to eye, and then fully compressed with all the spacers installed, we are 70. So that should be 27mm of available travel. I mean, that is the amount of shaft exposed, 27mm. But my goodness, it feels like it is properly under traveling. So I think even now, I can't wait to see what fluid pours out of that. We've got that 10 Pro spring, which are a pound. 37 millimeters long. It requires 1 pound of force to compress them 1 inch, otherwise known as 1 pound per inch. This spring, the stock spring from the Coyote, is 2.6 pounds per inch, which is crazy because that is going to weigh more than the Coyote itself, I'm pretty sure. And yes, we did not weigh it before we began to forensic, but it doesn't matter. It occurred to me while weighing this up, I was like, there's no way that front spring is the same stiffness. You can hopefully see the difference in the thickness of the coil. I don't want to sound like I'm mansplaining, but the number of coils and the thickness of the wire determines the rate of a spring. You can have 2 springs side by side, and if one has fewer coils but thinner wire, it will still be stiffer than the others. These all appear to be the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would call it, these all appear to be 9 coil springs. The front is 1.5 pounds per inch, 2.6 here, and 1. The 2.6 in the rear is questionably high. We had a reasonably decent compression in the front at the 1.5, which is why it probably as well feels under damped. That is over 50% stiffer in the rear, so if you're running the same oil in the front that you're running in the rear, you're going to end up where we are now. Another question, we've got clip-on limiters, external limiters, 6 millimeters of external limiters, and I'm almost willing to wager right now that this, yeah, it looks about the same. So from the cup to the top would be about 8 millimeters, and cup to top on this is 8 millimeters. So questions again abound in the cost saving pursuit. Let's put that 1.5 back on there. Why did they not just put 10 Pro cups on there, as it's already a thing that they have? And from the spring base to the built-in limiter, it's 8 millimeters, and then from the spring base to the top of the 2 clips, it is again 8 millimeters. So, you know, decisions are made for reasons. I can't tell you what they are. Now, we already have an improvement, despite this being alloy and this being plastic, and then improvement comes in the form of a bleeder screw. A bleeder screw makes it significantly more easy to assemble a shock. Let us see what kind of gusto they put these together with. What are we looking at in terms of seal at the top? And I would like to say, I will happily point out, look how dry those threads are. This may well indeed be a situation where the plastic outperforms, and look at the depth of the thread. I don't actually, oh I do, I see it now. I see it now. I need a receptacle to pour out this oil. We'll grab this because we want to see what kind of weight are we looking at. My semi-trained eye says 50, something approximating 50, and additionally, on that 10 Pro shock, which I don't know if it's full or not, it is, unfortunately. If you press that piston, you can tell. Like, look. So this is a much longer body. This is a completely different shock, basically. If you take the cap off and you push this all the way up, the piston will come well up above the top of the threads, which means that the limiter there is actually physically necessary. if you push this all the way up, we get a little meniscus of oil at the top. Look, it's still way down there. So if we remove the 6 millimeters of external limiters, which would only limit up travel, now we're going to pop the rod end and see if it has an internal limiter as well. If we go all the way up, now there we are. There we are, now we're just out. So perhaps that was the thought process, that if you remove, like if you were to run the little flat cup on a 10 Pro shock, the piston would just be slamming into the top of the shock body. So they switched to the, it seems like moving backwards. What are we looking at in terms of a piston? We're looking at 3-hole. We are looking at a 3-hole piston retained with E-clips. And we have got to get the bottom of this off so that we can determine how close they got the bore match. It is definitely, startlingly, an improvement over the 10 Pro shock. I never thought I'd be here. And it appears to share, I have to assume that the shock shaft is the same, but it appears to share no other parts in common. For a, regardless of what the length of your shock is, you're typically looking at about half the length of the shock, finished length. So a 90 millimeter shock is going to have a shaft length 40, 45, 47 millimeters, somewhere in there. This 97 millimeter shock has a 55 millimeter shaft on it, and I still don't understand why. These bodies, to me, strike as extremely kit bashable. Go to a shaft on this shock that's a little bit shorter, so that under full compression, the piston comes right near, very nearly to the top, and then you won't have to run any external spacers. You won't have any goof arounds. Internal bore, 8 millimeters, 8.2. So they've gone down to 8 millimeters, and then the piston is exact 800. 0.2 millimeters clearance. Piston to shaft is reasonably common. It's fairly common. And now I must remind myself, what is the bore on a 10 Pro? And it is 8 millimeters. So what they have done is they've been a bit clever. Respect definitely where respect is due, because the cleverness in cup, I stole the cup. The cleverness here is, in order to go to a plastic bodied shock, you have to make the body of that shock thicker in order to accommodate, because plastic, if you're unaware, plastic is not as strong as metal for the same thickness, the same weight, etc., etc. If you have a 100 millimeter plastic pipe and you have a 100 millimeter aluminum pipe, the aluminum is going to be significantly stronger. So the way they've gotten around this is they've made the outer part of the body much thicker, because you can see basically, okay, that spring is gone forever. We're out probably around 12 millimeters right here, meaning that the center part is over 10 for sure. Yeah, I would say that the wall of this out here, 11 and a half millimeters at the thinnest, 11 millimeters. So they just made the body thicker and then did a little tapering, a little empire waist to make it look as if the shock isn't as fat as it is. And, you know, clever. So seal-wise, what have they done to make it not leak? There is no, other than, I believe, probably the shock shaft, I don't think there's a part in common between the 10 Pro shock and the Coyote shock. So we've got a single, we've got, I feel, a spacer, Gonna have to get sharper on the picky. We've got the same black spacer, and we've got a seal. That is the exact identical orientation of seals fitted to the inside of a 10 Pro Shock. And 10 Pro Shocks hold oil like a colander holds water. So all that we are left assuming is that they have tightened this bore. They've gone down on the bore in the pocket for the seals. Same depth, still 7.5 millimeters deep. But they've made, in the molding, this is a little tighter. So it's just holding those seals a little tighter against the shock shaft. And it's keeping the insides on the insides. And then the much better configuration of a coarser and significantly deeper thread at the top for the cap. This is what I like to see. I like to see things moving in the right direction. I honestly think with those 3 holes, these are probably suited. This is the bottle of goo, which has written on the side of it 300 CST, because OE, which is around 27.5 weight, because every RTR, well, almost every RTR, and certainly every kit, comes with a bottle of oil. And that bottle of oil is honestly seldom marked. It seldom says anything on it at all. But they all tend to be right around that 300 CST mark. So whenever we get those, like ones like this, Element marks it, 300 CST. There should be some bottles and tubes up here. Get just a, here you go, here's your shock oil, little boy. Here, have some of this. What is this? I don't know. It all goes into this. It all goes into this old associated shock bottle. And it is what we fill OE shocks with. And we have yet to have a problem with doing so, because it's like wine blending. We're taking all those varietals and we're making something that actually works. In my perfect vision, everything gets purple Losi 40. I have piston drills to accomplish this. You'd probably have to drill these piston holes out 1 step to be able to run 40. And I'm going to use these shocks somewhere. I just don't think I'm going to use them here, because I genuinely believe that a 100 millimeter shock is too long for this vehicle. What I do love is the depth of that thread. That's 10 millimeters of threading on there. So we have removed the bleed screw. I'm going to tighten this all the way down. Sometimes, like plastic on plastic right there, you don't have to go full ugga-duggas to tighten that down. You get it finger tight like that, and it's great. And it really does. It feels solidly okay. We'll do our... I've run out of little portion cups. I borrow them from places like the Rubios. I use them to build checks, but I've run out. The hole right here is specifically designed to hold those 2-ounce portion cups. But I haven't been to a Rubio's in a while, so we then orient it so it's right there. Squish. Hold it in that position. Reinsert the bleed screw. The bleed screw has a nice lot of threads on it and goes down. Hello. See this guy? See this guy coming down? Oh, he went back up. Little spider axe friend. Oh no, there he goes. Little spider friend. Careful out here, bud. I'm going to accidentally smash you. Then what we want... Optimally, what we want to see is a little bit of drawback. Hey! And 300 CST. Not gonna lie. 300 CST, a little bit slow. Feels a little bit slow. So it was really overdammed. I would drill the pistons before. I don't want to run anything lighter than 27.5. The heavier the oil weight, the slower it's going to leak out. That's just how that works. And the more consistent your shock performance is going to be after oil does begin to leak out. Now, yes, this is much closer, and this is the softer spring. This is the 1.5 pound. 2.6, where are you at? Boy, that spring was off on its own. Did not want to be found. So with the 2.6, how does the 300 feel? That's about spot on. So on this 3-hole piston, 300 CST is almost exactly where you would want to be. And with the removed spacers, we are now at, yeah, still about 70. So it's just the collapse of the coil. You can't, if you're running this spring outfitted as it comes, you can't over collapse it. It doesn't bottom out. That shock feels, in axial terms, that shock feels fantastic. Luckily, 30 millimeter length and 35 millimeter length, particularly 35 millimeter length springs, are exceedingly common. And yes, I will answer a question that I just myself had, which is, how receptive are these to springs of other manufacturer? Because typically, in the small spring like this, you'll see 10 millimeter internal. This is an Element 1035.8 pound, basically the same stiffness as a Deluxe Soft, but 5 millimeters shorter, 3 millimeters shorter than this. Deluxe on this are going to be maybe okay. You could probably just squidge a 40 on here. So the question is, do these accommodate on cups and mounts? Absolutely. Absolutely. So you can throw most, that's one of the most important parts about a shock, is what springs can I put on there? Because in many cases, I forgot my Woobin was on. In many cases, and this one is no exception, the springs are wrong. Like, they're too firm all the way around. I had mentioned in the quick view that it is primarily unsprung weight here. Like this part right here. Install the parts that I've removed and the parts that have fallen off and are attempting to roll away. And what you have is 1,664 grams for what we will call the powered slider. Right? 1664. For the 4 combos, and for our purposes, what we mean when we call it a combo is wheel, tire, and insert, 120 grams per corner, which is 480 grams for the set. And the body comes in just right around 210. So you can see how just throwing a little bit heavier of a wheel at it, low weight, adding low weight, is the same as removing high weight. So if the wheel, if the body weighs 210 and you have a wheel at the corner weighing 210, you're really helping offset that body. It's not a direct correlation. You have to put more low to counteract more high. But we're not going to have to throw a ton of weight at this thing, I do not believe. I do not believe. I also neglected to determine the fore to aft weight distribution on this vehicle, because I am of this somewhat, at least what I believe to be informed opinion, that it doesn't really matter that much. Fore to aft weight ratio, I have crawled with vehicles with 70% weight in the front, 70-30 split. And I've crawled with vehicles with 50-50. We had one assembly at some point in the not too far away past where the distribution was actually negative. Like, it was built like a Ferrari to go around a track fast. I believe the way the vehicle came configured, with a battery mount in the wrong place, battery like right here, the vehicle was from the factory 4654. That really became noticeable. Did we put any heat shrink I mean, did we put any thread lock on this particular pin? We didn't just put a little, we put quite a lot. That was really on there. This feels extraordinarily smooth for an axial axle, to the point where I'm a little concerned about it. We know, we've been shrinkflated to a degree, right? We're in agreement at this. We just had to bake off glue-ons. We just disassembled plastic shocks, plastic bodied shocks, which, if you want to get into a little episode of mental microeconomics, you can ask yourself, versus the option of just respringing and refitting the Leaky 10 Pro shock, which sell on the open market for $60 a pair. This is an entirely new parts ecosystem. New cap, new body, new spring seal, new cup, new springs. Might be a same rod end, might be the same shaft, but we're talking 80% new parts. So ask yourself what the savings is of this versus this. And when you're talking about, 10,000 units, 50,000 units, 100,000 units, and then we've been getting axial vehicles with those bolt-together plastic bead locks that come on Capras and JLUs and come on all of them. We've been getting them for years, but one piece of plastic is obviously cheaper than 3 pieces of plastic, so you end up with this. Then you combine with that moving of the manufacturing from Taiwan to China, and surprisingly, we're not really seeing anything. Okay, the dude was paid by the amount dispensed to insert the grease. Absolutely not messing around. That is the level of grease that I would put in there. I mean, it's like dead silent. Do we have wigglies? No. That fits in there really well. I have mentioned in the past, I'll do it again. Oh, would you like to see a little bit of, oh yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I had neglected to mention previously the smooth bottom. They smoothed these off. That's a little quality of life improvement. I'm not mad at that at all. Let's get one screw back in here so it doesn't fall apart on us. The fun part is later, I get to put all this back together. Let's take a look inside the portal. Using some big ones to hold these boxes shut. I'm also curious about many moons ago, Axial made a decision to make the front and rear portal boxes ever so slightly different. So inside this cover, it is usually marked A or B. We've got the same sintered portal gears that we've been seeing in Axial portal boxes since time immemorial. It is the same stamped Axial hex, which is clearly designed for a plastic wheel and will and does become problematic in many situations, as this wheel hex is just under 5 millimeters thick, and that includes the little grabby guys on the face to hold on to plastic wheels. So we'll just call it let's see if I can grab in between them. Yeah, that is a 4.5 millimeter thick hex. How could that become a problem, you might ask? Well, let us grab a typical 9mm hub, and when we say 9mm, we mean that it is 9mm this way. This one's actually a 10. So it is 10mm there to there. If we do this, that hex pocket is 5.2mm deep. I think you can see where 0.6mm of difference in depth. This one just, ooh, baby, just a hair. But you can and will run across pockets. I can show you one right now. Particularly in wheels of fixed offset without replaceable hubs, like some of my favorite, these little mil-spec looking ones. These are nice and heavy. When you drop that same hex in there, if this guy's not too wallowed out, where'd he go? And now you see why the inside of that is all kind of polished silver like that. I will say this, while we may be full-fledged into peak shrinkflation era, this is the hex that I just removed here from our Coyote Tuxedo Dan. And this is one of the myriad number of these that I have in a bin. Yeah, look how much, like, you can see where that was, like, they must center it on almost like a sprue and then snap them off. Because this is gross. We tend to replace these because they're over thin. We would have to replace this for the same reason, but while they are shrinkflating us on the one hand, that got better. That's like, you can tell by using this thing, by looking, that this has gotten better than that. And plastic shock doesn't leak oil like a colander. It has a bleed cap. We've got a lot of improvements here. We are going to take, I don't think I'll drop the front axle all the way because I don't want to have to futz with kingpins. So we still have that little bit of bump steer present in the front. It is a thing that happens. Well, not bump steer, we've got axle swing. Axle swing and bump steer are two completely different components. You are going to have some element of axle swing on any 3-link plus panhard front end. Your goal is just to try to minimize it because you have that panhard bar, the track bar, has to move in an arc. So it's going to make the axle move in an arc. It is fixed to something rigid, which is the chassis. So then the unsprung weight is going to rotate around that pivot point. So here is where the big test comes in. Cover comes off, and now I can show you Vive la Différence. This is, don't get it confused, this is the rear portal cover with the gear attached, and this is the front portal cover with the gear attached. You see that little guy? You see that little shroudy boy right there? Again, this is the rear. And voila. Just goes right on. But then if we take the front one and try to put it on the rear, is it going to fit? Well, it's not. Now, why did they do that? We still don't know. No one really knows. The rear fits on the front and the rear. The front only fits on the front. And where this will become an issue for you, potentially, is that people out there in the world who are making extremely economical aftermarket parts for this, some of them don't notice the difference between shroud above the bearing and no shroud above the bearing. So that's a big part of the reason why sometimes you'll get an aftermarket part and it won't fit together with other aftermarket parts because what are they, fruit of a poison tree, something like that. The parts don't go together because they were basically made improperly from the very beginning. And when I say made improperly from the very beginning, I mean, what could have been the reason for that? Why is that thinned out at the top? I well and truly don't know. I am not a genuine engineer. I'm a fake one. And a fake one knows what to look for after having experienced things not done right in the past. That classifies to me. So we have, while being shrinkflated, right? Well, by having things taken away from us, we are really seeing the trickle down of globalization for sure. This speed control and this motor are basically non-negotiable. You can run them for a little while, and I still believe that this vehicle is very close. It is on the borderline of being an RTR, but not quite. Little stuff. They gave us quality of life in axial shocks that don't leak. And when I say this is the only axial release with shocks that don't leak, that's basically a fact. Every axial shock, many were the day you bought an axial RTR and when you opened the box there were 4 pools of oil in it. These are still dry. Still dry. I am blown away and taken aback by this fact. 349 is where we sit now, and 349 is, I mean, it's not, I hate to say that we're being conditioned. We're absolutely being conditioned into taking less for more money. It's going to sound wild. I would be over the moon if this thing was $299.99 out the door, like the Traxxas Sport used to be. The Coyote at $299.99 would be an absolute, would be Canyon recommended. Go get one. At $349, buy it from someplace that has coupons eligible. You know, if coupons are eligible, get that price down a little bit, because it is at its core, despite what are inarguably positive improvements. Also, do we assume that the guy who greases the portal gears is a different guy that greases the ring and pinion? Because that is a decidedly different amount of grease. They used it all up in there. There are still, we know it is an RTR. And RTR does basically mean ready to replace. So the electronics, the ghastly SLT2, again, in those cost-saving measures, they stuck us, and they stuck us good, with glue-ons, plastic shocks, the Slick Rock 35 turn, which, don't fool yourself, is a different sticker on a sealed can 35 turn. It's garbage. The fact that we're still getting these in 2025 is wild, when but they don't want you to have something better. Okay, I don't want to get too conspiratorial before we wrap this one up. It does indeed come with an SR515, and if there is some small takeaway from this, it's that you can bundle all of this stuff together. You can take all of the disposable electronics, the 664, the Spectrum ESC, the Slick Rock 35, and the SR515 with the SLT2. You can put them in a little box together, and you can sell somebody, hey, I'll sell this all to you for $40. Because an SR515 receiver is, and please, hold on, if you're wearing a hat, grab it from both sides of the brim. Spectrum sells that receiver for $80. 80. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, this is a Radiolink R4 FGM. Look at the size of that. And it has a gyro in it, and it costs $17 on Amazon. And this is a Radiolink R6 FG, which has a gyro in it, accommodates 6 channels. And these sell on Amazon for about $13. If you find sellers selling for the right price, you can purchase this receiver on AliExpress. I have seen them as low as $2. In this era where we live right now, the notion of an $80 receiver almost seems foreign, and it should seem apocalyptic to anyone under the age of, say, 40, because I'm from the olden times, where I started off as a San Juan Airtronics man, and the 241 receiver for an Airtronics MT4 was $100, and it was $100 20 years ago. If Airtronics was still around today, that receiver would buy you 2 radios. So you could easily go to someone and say, I'll give you all of this stuff for 40 or 50 bucks. And someone will buy it. I'd say 40, you'll sell it like that. Because that person is probably spending 40 on the SR515. And you're just using it as a way to get rid of all of the other stuff. Right? Hey, that's an option. And then you take that 40 bucks and you turn around and use it to buy a radio. Buy a Radio Link RC4. And then you get to be happy. Because happiness is a big part of why we're at this. So, we don't need to get forensic on the LCXU. It's the best gearbox Axial currently makes. You can fit a dig module to it for 50 bucks. Do I wish it was fitted with a dig module? Yes. Am I surprised that it isn't? No. Searching the metal databanks, in terms of Axial, the only 2 vehicles off the top of my head that come with dig pre-installed are the Capra and the 10.3 like JLU early Bronco models. The dig in the Capra, no, let's rephrase it more dramatically. The dig in the 10.3 gearbox, not to be confused with the LCXU that also comes in the 10.3, is the worst dig in the world. It is terrible. Its actuation is unpredictable. It relies on tiny crap shocks. Crap servo, the SX106, 107. Horrible. But it's not the worst in the world, because the Capra is. The Capra gearbox has the worst dig ever. It is wholly unpredictable in engagement and disengagement. And you will burn out that little SX107 servo probably on the first day of ownership, maybe the second day. So we can actually say, hey, maybe it's not so bad that they didn't give us the dig module. Now, I still retain $299 RTR sale price. Great. $349 with dig? Ooh, now we're talking. But they can't do that because they shrinkflated you on the radio and they gave you a 2-channel radio and you need a 3-channel radio with endpoint adjustability for dig. So maybe, again, they're giving us less, but sometimes maybe it's for the best. I still think that the Coyote is strong. We are going to do the thing. We're going to play the game where we're going to say, hey, slap his top on with all of his bottoms removed. He is definitely not artsy. Little, sometimes you get it. Sometimes, hey, Tuxedo Dan, would you like $200? We're going to throw $200 at it. And then we're going to see what we think of it after that. Because nowadays, you can do some work for $200. And then at that, if you got a coupon and you used your A-Main points or you used your Horizon rewards or use whatever deal you got, you'll probably be sitting at around, hopefully, a $500 price point. And while they took from us, they didn't take with both hands, because this is currently the best shock Axial is putting out. Unfortunately, it's not 90 millimeters long. 100 millimeter is not as versatile. Well, 97 millimeter, which is basic. So if you have a Capra, do you already own a Capra? Are you thinking about getting one of these? Well, when you get one of these, you're going to respring these, but you're going to put these on your Capra. And you're going to be happy, because now your Capra shocks aren't going to leak anymore. And they're going to be nice and smooth. but you are definitely going to have to respring them because all the springs are going to be too stiff. And then you're going to put Amazon shocks on this, which is what we're going to do in the third part of 5 of 3. In that, when we throw $200 towards Tuxedo Dan and see how we come out the other side. And in betwixt, don't forget, there will be the standard tire test protocol quick view of the OE Trepidor. And I'm looking forward to that as much as I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next one. Ooh, how smooth was that transition? And I hope that in between now and when we meet again, you won't all do your very best. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you again here in the Canyon. The 10-3 Coyote is significantly better than the base camp, to the point where, as a person who has bought 2 base camp kits and a base camp RTR, I'm trying not to be bitter about it.